be joining us, but we just want to take care of the time that you took to join us today. So welcome. Oh, joining too quickly. So welcome to Bridging the Gap, navigating the transition from school services to adult services. So a little bit about us. I'm joined today with Brian Diardro, who is our Director of Service Operations, and I am Sarah Palin. We are from GROW Associates. GROW is a nonprofit organization serving adults with developmental disabilities. We are located in Randolph, Massachusetts. We have been around for over 50 years providing these services. So we have a CBDS program, a day hab, supported employment, transportation, a respite enrichment club, and transition services. So we've been around for a long time providing these services and wanted to share some of our knowledge with all of you. So today we're going to talk about the adult day programs that I just mentioned. We're going to talk a little bit about the critical skills that you should be really looking at building before that transition time, and tips for creating a smooth, person-centered planning transition plan. We ask that you put your questions in the chat, and then we'll answer those at the end of the presentation. And then just a reminder that the training is being recorded. So just we ask that when you are putting any questions that you maybe not use names or specific individuals, maybe just general topics. And if there's any other specific questions, we're happy to answer them offline. So what comes after 22? For many families, the transition out of school services can feel like falling off a cliff. At 22, the entitlement of your school services ends, and adult services don't necessarily pick up in the same way or at the same time. It's a major shift from an entitlement system under the school districts to an eligibility-based program that is tied to state funding and availability. The change alone can feel overwhelming, especially when you don't know what to expect. But today we're going to walk you through what some of those day program options are, provide you some tips with helping to make that transition smooth, and help you have some ideas so that you can make that path unique for what works for you and successful. So one of the pieces that is important to understand is there is a big difference between an IEP that is in your school system to moving to an ISP, which is an individualized support plan in adult services. These are two very different documents. The IEP, as you know, is used in a school system from ages 3 to 22. It is mandated by federal law. The differences in adult services, those are a guide from state services. It's not a mandate like it is for school services. Education in the IEP are going to be focusing on those educational goals, reading, writing, science, social studies, those type of things. Your ISP is going to focus more on those life skill goals, so employment, independence, social skills, those type of things. Your IEP is driven by a school team, and your ISP is driven by the individual with input from families and staff within the programs. And the other thing that I think many people don't know is that an IEP is done annually, where an ISP is every 2 years. So you're going to be having much more general goals in an ISP because it covers a 2-year time period than you would in your school's IEP. So we're going to jump now into the different day programs. So what is CBDS? So CBDS are community-based day services. This program is designed with very intentional purpose to help individuals develop, enhance, and maintain the personal, social, and community-based skills they need for fulfilling life. The focus is not just being busy during the day, but is truly enriching people's lives to be supportive and meaningful participation in their communities. Every activity is offered in CBDS is a pre-planned with clear purpose. The goal is to create opportunities for real community connections and develop relationships. It's about helping individuals be active, valued members in their neighborhood, workplaces, and local organizations. It's not just isolated activities. What CBDS is not. It's not a replacement for paid employment. It's not a prerequisite for employment either. These activities are more of, kind of think of say, a path to employment. You're working on building those skills so that then someone can then go into an employment. Activities are not just to fill time. They should be, as I said, meaningful and not just plugged into someone's schedule or just random activities. They need to be meaningful activities that are not just, simple, fun, recreational activities, but the meaningful piece to someone's what they enjoy, what they want to do. Choice is a really big piece of CBDS programming, making sure that someone has a say in what the activities are. CBDS staffing. So as you're listening and as we're going through programming, it's important to understand the differences between school services and what the staffing and supports are versus adult services. So for a CBDS program, staffing is based on an assessment that is done by a program called a CDAT that we then turn into the Department of Developmental Services that determines what the level of need is for the individual. Staffing ratios are typically from a 1 staff person to 5 individuals and can range from a 1 to 1. Now, that being said, most programs do tend to lean towards that 1 to 5, 1 to 4. It's much harder to get those one-to-one supports in many of the programs just because of the availability of services. And again, the supports that are put in place are varying based on the community needs and the individual's needs. So a day habilitation program. So day habilitation is a medically based model program that focus on skill development and health. So these are on-site programs. Typically, they're not going out in the community as frequently as a CBDS. Typically, these programs may go out into the community once a month, twice a month, if that, depending on the agency's ability to take individuals out into the community. The focus is really those activities of daily living, self-care, socialization, communication, and behavioral support. So your activities are really focused on those for the day. Individuals in these programs typically have a higher clinical and physical need. So the day hub staffing and support, staffing ratios again are typically about 1 to 5 or depend on the individual's need. Those are determined through a leveling tool that the program does and then turns over to Mass Health for an authorization. So we may give our suggestion and Mass Health will then tell us whether or not they approve that level of supports or if they determine a different level meets the individual's needs better. These programs typically have different levels of staffing that come in, nursing, behavioral clinicians, physical therapists, occupational and speech therapists, depending on the program. Some programs may have those on site and some programs have a consult model where those therapists come in, a couple of times a week and provide training to the direct support staff that work in the programs that are then able to work on those goals.
So I'm going to take on employment services?
Sure.
Excellent. So like Sarah noted, the CBDS programs and the day hub programs are very different than what is experienced in the school system, right? Up till 22, up or 18 or 22, there's a focus really on academics. When you get to those 22 and over programs, you're focusing on things like life skills, community engagement. In the day hub model, more of those medically focused and maintenance things with PTOT speech involved. So they're all very, very different services, and it is a very distinct difference from educational programming under 22 to adult service programming. And I think a lot of people are not used to kind of the differences and find some challenges as they get into the 22 and up world. One of the more exciting programs that I find here at GROW in adult services is employment services. The individuals who are coming to our community-based program have the ability to have meaningful employment, be employed in the community, get paid, work with their peers. It is really a fantastic program and gives a lot of life benefits. The goal is to focus on obtaining and maintaining competitive employment. We do things both in our CBDS program and in the employment services, like resume building, preparing for interviews through a variety of methods, job development that happens on site, and then on-site job coaching. So people who are having a job, we send job coaches that are providing support to that individual to help them be as independent as they can. The goal is skill development and independence. We work to get ourselves out of providing that support. We want those individuals to be able to work independently, have the skills they need to be successful. And if new things arise or a change in job occurs or advancement occurs, being present so we can help the person be successful in these new opportunities. Employment staffing is typically one-on-one support, so we're providing that support in the community. So we are going with an individual to their work site, again, helping them in a variety of tasks, things they need to be supported with. And the goal, again, is to work ourselves out of there, to plan for independence. Typically, it's about 1 to 2 hours per week, depends on the level of need the person requires or kind of their placement in that job. If they've been there for a long time, the hope is that they no longer need as many hours, and we're there really just to provide a little bit of extra maintenance. Job coaches are not present for every shift, but they offer supports at different levels to promote independence. Again, very different from some of those academic models where there's a person with you at all times. Most things in the adult services world are not like that, right? The staffing ratios are very different than they were, and many families are not ready for that change that occurs from school age supports to adult age supports. Another type of work supported employment is group supported employment. That's integrated community setting where there's typically groups of like 2 to 8. They work in what's called typically like an enclave. The focus there is similar skill development, independence, job readiness, teamwork, and more of the soft skills. I put that in parentheses because when they're not soft skills, they're oftentimes just as important. A lot of those things are the social skills, engagement with peers and coworkers and other stakeholders. Employment is paid and usually involves a contract with local businesses. So what this looks like is oftentimes sending a larger group to provide work done at a job site. A little bit different than sending just one individual who is working at a job site and getting coaching from one job coach. Same type of focus on independence and skill development, but a little bit of a different contract.
And then just one quick note, somebody asked if they should be taking notes. We are recording this and this will be available on our website after, so you'll be able to get everything from there. Brian, you got skill building?
I do, thank you. So prior to transition services, we want to work on a variety of skills, but here's some of the main topics. Safety skills, ensuring that individuals are able to access the community, access social events and opportunities, and do so in a safe manner. Things like crossing the road or managing their diets or interacting with strangers or people in the community. All skills that should be worked on in the academic level, but also that we're focusing on generalizing, maintaining, and developing new skills as a person transitions to the adult service world. Daily living skills, ensuring that the individual is able to do self-care routines, work on things like paying bills, getting clothing that's appropriate for the type of weather. Again, skills that should and are often developed in the school settings, but we find that as we come to adult services, they need to be generalized, maintained, or developed a little further. Social skills are very important. The community-based program really does focus on giving people access to the community, developing relationships with their peers, not just from the program they're in, but also in their community, in their town, in their homes. Self-advocacy, we want people to be able to tell us what they need, how things are going, what supports they need to be added, or when they're ready to be independent. Behavioral supports, again, looks oftentimes quite different than it did in the school settings. Having access to a clinician, a BCBA, an OT, a speech therapist, adjustment counselor, those things are typically present in the school and able to be accessed quickly. Adult services, again, the funding is very different and the access to those supports can be different. Many programs do have high quality clinicians on staff or accessible by contract, but the services do look different. And it is important to know, like Sarah had noted with the IEP versus the ISP, that sometimes families and caregivers assume that the IEP will kind of be carried over to the adult service world. And that's not the case. So programming for those things and being ready for that change is quite important. Generalizing skills, again, oftentimes learning things in an educational setting, those skills can be performed in those settings, but the adult services world is different and there's new settings, new social opportunities, new people. So we really want to focus on a person being able to generalize those skills and programming for those things, making sure that they happen. And ultimately fitting supports, right? In all of human services, education, and adult services, our job is to work ourselves out of a job. There are many people that need support, and we want to help promote independence to the point that the person is able to be successful on their own. You know, if they need additional supports, they can ask for that, and we'll notice those areas where additional support is needed. But we try to do our best to work ourselves out of a job and help as many people as possible be as independent as they can be.
So we wanted to provide you with 10 tips to transition planning. Number one of the most important is start early. Like we've talked about, you know, some of those skill building and those type of things. Don't wait until someone is 21 because there's a lot that can happen starting at 14, 15 years old with some of these skill building pieces, getting to know and connecting with other individuals. Really start as early as you possibly can. That is going to help with this transition process be a lot smoother. And that being said, things take time. So for instance, connecting with DDS or other local state agencies as early as you can. DDS needs to know who's coming and, going to be in that next turning 22 class. And if they don't hear from you until someone's 21 and a half, it can make that transition planning much more difficult. Eligibility for DDS can take time, and these other state agencies, it can take weeks, if not months. So really making sure that you're connecting with them as early as possible. Meet with your service coordinator, invite them to your IEP meetings as early as possible. I mean, it's great to have those service coordinators attending IEP meetings, even at 14, 15 years old. You'll get a transition coordinator later on and invite them to all of your ISP or your IEP meetings. Also, take time just to meet with them so that they can get to know the individual and what they need and what services that they're going to need turning at 22. Again, use that IEP strategically. As Brian just talked about what skills you need to be working on, this is the time when you have the ability to adapt IEP goals so that you can really work on things like that independence, fading those supports. We've seen very often that someone may go in and have a one-to-one and they've had a one-to-one for many, many years and become very prompt dependent. And so you really want to start working on fading those supports so that someone can be more successful moving into an adult service program. Get to know the adult services, right? So you're really going to look at what programs are out there, not just what individual agencies and what's open, but knowing what type of program you should be looking at that might fit someone's needs. Get the individual involved, right? They should have a say and, if possible, and what programs would be a good fit for them and what they want to do and where they want to go. Really building those independent living skills, like Brian had talked about with what goals you should be working on, is trying to have the person as independent as possible. Everything from, those activities of daily living, being able to use the bathroom independently, being able to work on some of these life skills that will be able to transition into adult services. Practice community access. If you're looking at a CBDS program where someone's going into the community on a daily basis, practice those skills. What does it mean to go into the community? Parking lot safety, crossing the street, staying with a group. Those type of things are all skills that you could be working on as someone is 15 years old to get them ready for a successful transition. Schedule visits and tours of local programs. Depending on how early you do this, a program may be able to tell you kind of what their weight is, and but if you're doing it at like 19 or 20, the program may not be able to tell you, what the wait list is. Things change all of the time, but it's good to see what's out there so that you have an idea when it's time for those referrals to go in of what would be a good program for the individuals. Document what works. So this is going to really help when you do that transition. Does Johnny do really well with a 5-minute countdown? What are things that the individual likes? What is the things that the individual doesn't like? And being able to provide that information so that they can be as successful as possible. And again, expect an adjustment period. This is an adjustment period for everyone. And so it's going to take time to maybe find the right program, or, have the person really enjoy going to their program because the hours might be different, or, they're with a new group of peers. So it can take time for for somebody to settle in and have that be successful.
Sarah, can I just add, just
Yeah.
to know for all this, I think one of the things the kind of the unifying factor here is just being ready to start these things early. The earlier that you're aware of what programs are local, like Sarah noted, that you've identified the programs that would be the best fit, that what programs are available. It's really great to start looking at these things, right? Not to be overly cautious, but at that 14, 16, 18 mark, right? So what's around. As you're documenting the types of supports and services that your child would need, where would they fit best? I saw a question in the chat around scheduling a tour. Not just promoting Grow, but go to other agencies and take a tour. See if it's the right fit. See what the vibes are. See what kind of people are there. See what staffing ratios are, just so you have an idea, because 22 comes very quickly. I have a 7-year-old autistic son, and I'm in a lot of groups that the families will say, they thought about this at 14, but then all of a sudden their child was 20, and then there were these waiting lists. They didn't have DDS support. So really, not to scare anybody, but it's important to start this early, because the services are very different. Sarah and I talk about this often. We've worked in both adolescent, children's school, and adult settings, and the services are very different, and many people don't know what the adult service programming looks like, and it's hard to plan for that and ensure what's best for your child or your loved one if you don't have that information. So we're happy to always share information. There's lots of great resources on our website, and we're happy to share other resources as well. But the earlier the better. It just helps to kind of ensure that smooth transition, because there is an adjustment period, whether you're have done your due diligence or not. So you want to make that as meaningful type of change as possible. So just to kind of summarize, those 10 points are all really, really important.
So we wanted to let you know about some programs that we have here at Grow. We do have some specific transition programs. We have a transition assessment, which I will go into in detail in a minute. But we also do some on-site transition programming where individuals can come to our program a couple of days a week. We would work this out with the school district. So someone might come here 2 days a week, and then they're at their school 3 days a week to get used to coming to an adult program and help with that transition. We also do the transition trainings like this one today, but we also have a series that we will be sending out. So, hopefully you'll be joining us for many of those. So our transition assessment is for school-aged students. We can start that as early as 14 doing these assessments, all the way up into someone is transitioning out, but again, as early as possible. And this transition assessment is really looking at the person as a whole, right? So many transition assessments may just look at like those vocational skills, or maybe just social skills. Our assessment looks at the entire list here. So we are going to do an assessment of what are the vocational skills, what are their leisure skills, activities of daily living, safety skills, advocacy, social skills, what behaviors are they seeing, and then we also review the behavior plan. Now, that being said, as part of the behavior plan, we look at that and say, what suggestions can we provide you so that that behavior plan can then be transitioned into an adult service world. So this is an assessment that we do. If anyone's interested, you can feel free to reach out to us. And here is our contact information. So there are several different questions that are popping up. So I'm going to run through those. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat. Let's see.
I see
I never knew
who to schedule. Oops, sorry.
Go ahead, Brian.
It said who to schedule for a tour. You can, my email's there, balgero@growassociates.org. Happy to answer any questions too, but specifically for tours, you can reach out to me.
Someone said, I never knew DDS would go to IEP meetings. Yep, they will. You just have to invite them. So feel free to reach out to your service coordinator. Answer the question about tours. Where do we find the list of programs? Is that something that DDS provides? So yes, because you want to, depending on what provider, if it's DDS, if it's DMH, depending on what state agency that your individual is eligible for, that state agency will have a list of certified providers. So they are on their website on mass.gov, and that's something you can also get from your service coordinator. Have you ever have adults starting out in CPDS program and as they gain independence move to employment or supported or group employment programs at your program? Absolutely. So this happens very often. So we'll have somebody come into a CPDS program. We are able to then build up that independence, and then we are then moving somebody into supported employment. Some people come in and do actually kind of like half CBDS and half supported employment. It depends on their like work schedule. So if someone works maybe 2 days a week, we may do 2 days a week of that employment services. Maybe they get like 2 hours a week of job coaching, and then they come to our CBDS program for those other days. So that's definitely something that happens quite frequently for us.
And to add on that too, Sarah and I have a little bit of a delay. We're in the offices next to each other, and it's hard to time our talking sometimes. But the employment services too, again, with the transition considerations, if a individual is coming from a school setting and maybe they've already have a job or they're working part-time, that's really important as you're coming into a program, because there could be a different allocation of hours assigned to that. So if a person comes in with a job at 22, we can start right on with job coaching. We can be ready to provide those services. We can ensure that we have job coaches available. So again, the longer amount of time that's spent in the kind of planning for transition, the more seamless that transition becomes. The hours become a little bit easier to get. Sometimes people have come in and they come to the CPDS program and they already have a job. So now when we're looking to get employment service hours, it's going back to DDS and working with those contracts. So just as much planning as possible helps, the individual primarily, but then the organization too, to make sure that they're allocating resources to be able to best support that individual. So yeah, just a testament to pre-planning and being ready for that transition, and how it's helpful to ensure a smooth change from educational to adult services.
Yeah, that's a great point. Any other questions that we can answer for you guys? Yeah, so I think kind of, as we said, the biggest takeaways as early as possible, and using your IEP, using your school services to really focus on those skills to make someone independent as possible moving into adult services. Fading supports as much as you possibly can, which can seem scary, right? Like you worked really hard to get maybe some of those one-to-ones. And then, we're talking about like you should be fading back as much as possible. But in reality, you're moving into an adult service world where the ratios are very different than school services. And so to make that person successful as possible, fading those supports are really important. Someone just asked, what is availability like yours? What is availability like in your various programs? So it depends on our programs. We do currently have wait lists, but we are bringing folks in. So mainly our programs, our folks are coming into our day hab and then into our CBDS, and then kind of coming into those supported employments. So, you know, we're still, Brian is actually his whole big focus of his is working on those lists. But yeah, I mean, we do have waits, again, as early as possible, getting those referrals in, you know, about, I would say, you know, if you can start visiting programs around 20, you know, and then being able to make sure that those packets are coming over to us and you're getting on lists no later than 21. You know, we always try to get folks in on their 22nd birthday, but that is, you're going to hear across the state that is very difficult, that there are waits.
Yeah, and to that end too, I think having your name on a list, having DDS and service coordinators be aware of those needs is important, because a lot of our staffing patterns and you know, what we're hoping to staff and reaching out to add additional staff is based on the needs typically of those turning 22 population. Post-COVID, there were you know, people who had not had access to services or were hesitant to come back into service. But it seems like for the most part, those individuals have gotten the services they need. They're back in program. So really the big push now is making sure that when people are coming into the 22 and over service world, that they have a program to transition to quickly. But that becomes much easier if a person is on the list, if they've been working with their service coordinator. So again, it is scary and it is a change, but the best thing that we can do to help people to make that change as easy as possible is to start early, so that all parties are aware, you know, finding the right program, making sure it's a good fit, getting access to employment services if they're necessary. Some people will have a split between CBDS and day hab. It's rare, but that's also done because their service teams have been aware kind of these varying needs. So you know, time is important, and being on those lists and being ready for the change helps to make it as successful as possible.
Any other questions? So after the meeting, we will be posting this training up on our website, and then we will be sending it all out to everyone who came today and everyone who registered, so that you'll have access to the training. And then you can always reach out to us if you have any questions.
Yes, our emails are there. We're always
you.
happy to help. Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate everyone from coming, and happy to share as much information as we can.
All right, thank you everyone for coming today. We appreciate it, and always feel free to reach out to us.